So, beta prey female arousal system. It kind of has this, in some cases, an attraction towards this, bad boyish, more like abuser style of agency. It's like an alpha predator male style of agency. Abusive, more abusive and controlling, and has lots of control, and gets more of it. Um, and then also perhaps an aversion of attraction towards more familial agency, like Fred, and perhaps more familial circumstances, like having a good relationship with their mother. Um, and as I've said, that's actually, I would think, very uh, something I would want to have in a spouse is, and we love all the women out there, and but I guess having a healthy relationship with her father is something that I would very much uh, find something as healthy, something we've so beta prey female agency kind of finds these unhealthy things as attractive, as far as like mental attributes, especially, and and sometimes finds its own oppression, all these unhealthy things, not just unhealthy um, attributes of a partner, but unhealthy things that are done to them, um, abusing them, uh, you know, tying them up, stuff like that. Very sad and sick. Um, but they can't help it. That's a part of this beta prey female arousal system. Now, yes, I'm not saying we shouldn't find men with alpha predator male attributes as unattractive. We should find them sick and in need of help, and actually find very attractive and good that we can help change people with those kinds of problems. The whole dress up like devils and love people into a familial state, show them mercy and love. So it's not just, but we shouldn't find it, desirable to continue it. It's one thing to have these problems. It's another thing to have them and not solve for them, and that's what that would attempt to do. So, but it's not just mental attributes that are found attractive. It's also in their muscle structure, such as maybe being more muscular, and bone structure, certain broad shoulders, or being taller. Uh, these could be considered types of alpha predator male attributes uh, that beta prey or that beta prey female agency has been selected to find attractive. But I should rephrase that. These could be considered kind of a naturally selected things that the females have been selected to find attractive. Um, I feel real bad for the tall girls too, because they have the same kind of trouble as men do in this, I guess, uh, naturally selected bias in their uh, arousal system, and kind of cultural too. But the women have that same kind of problem, and for being tall, and I think it's a problem of resource distribution and adaptation distribution. So, you know, there's a limited amount of resources. Uh, so to have taller women, well, first of all, think of the functions of the women and men in the group. They have the women are to rear children and forage mainly. The men are to hunt, and uh, so you have to have you want taller men and stronger men to go out and serve that function. And with women, you don't need them to be as tall. So we've kind of have this naturally selected perception where we want small women and we want tall men because each of those serves their functions best. You know, we could have tall women and they could serve their functions just as good, but they, as I said, absorb more resources. They need more resources, and there's not enough resources to do that. See, so it's like you'd want to. There's a limited amount of resources to grow this woman and man, and you're going to want a taller man and a shorter woman to serve each of their functions in a resource efficient way. And we've kind of evolved to find that that standard, this kind of human standard or naturally selected standard of a mate. Now, before I get into more of this height subject, I'd like to say, and because it's and not just height, but like just the civil man versus kind of off this naturally selected uh, man, because I'm going to not just get really into the height, but more like the uh, uh, how natural selection has selected man to be, and how what civilization kind of you want civilization in man, how you want to design civilization, or man for civilization. Sorry. Before I get into all that, I'd like to say I love people of all heights, shapes, and sizes and minds, and it's not often not about being the best, but rather not being the best size and shape and height and the best mind. It's more about rather helping people and everyone and all of us do the best we can uh, with the conditions we have, because uh, that's stronger than any best person. But then stronger than any best person, you don't want to be this best person. But stronger than that is the best society, and that's a society that accepts other people. And if they're not the quote unquote best, whatever, we love them and accept them, and we become something bigger. Because I speak of that because I'm gonna be speaking of like weird things like designer babies and stuff like that, to where it's like, or not really weird things, but futuristic things, to where it made uh, people feel inferior or something, because it's not, people aren't, what's superior is what I just said, a superior society more than just a superior sort of species, a superior society working together. So different kinds of people. So people of different heights can be good for different things. A tall dad, for example, we can intimidate others and protect their little girl. It's good for certain people to be tall, to serve the functions they have, while others, it's good for them to be less tall. And this is uh, argument for diversity. People who think differently, do different things, have different shapes, make a better group than a homogeneous one, because such a group serves a wider range of functions and creates a more diverse array of systems and interactions. Excuse me, people with different shapes and sizes are good for different functions. Sorry, I'm going to get on a little bit of a tangent about intimidation. And what when I was younger, I have used intimidation to try and solve for bullying behavior. But now I find myself trying to solve it with more negotiation and drop intimidation altogether. But sometimes I just have to and just talk me, no. But often, sometimes people don't have the luxury of being able to negotiate. So they do what they can with what they have to protect what they love, which is intimidation in some cases. Sort of like the American Revolution. The founders of America couldn't completely negotiate and solve their problems with truth and argument or persuasion, but they did the best with what they had. They did negotiate, but their strategy included intimidation and violence. So, what about civilization's function? We have a pretty good idea of how nature selects man to be. But in a futuristic civilization, how would you want him to be? Uh, I think one of the biggest things you'd want him to design him around would be being able to optimally interact with children and other members of the family in a familial way. Uh, so, of course, you'd want this kind of evolution away from this more alpha predator male kind of masculinity, a mind state. You'd want to evolve out of that. Those memory systems, those aren't good for raising kids. Those destroy them. Uh, but So you'd want a civilization man to have a kind of familial mind away from the alpha predator male mind, and more Fred Rodgery, less Adolf. Uh, so there's other functions. You'd want to design the civil man around, but that's most important, and including even physical, um, uh, or not shouldn't say physical, but bone and muscle structure, not just mental systems that are used to interact with the family. Um, so those, I'll get to that in a second. That family, how you design a man to be more familial. I don't know why I didn't do it right here, but we'll just roll with it. So these other functions, though, we'd want to design the civil man around could include manual labor on society and survivability. Making men strong could help serve the function of labor, and as far as survivability, I'd actually think you'd want uh, less tall men, as this reduces mass, which reduces damage from falling. And in weather hazard conditions, as well as many manual labor conditions, the terrain is unstable, which increases the probability of falling. But not being as tall also makes men more efficient in resource use and technological use. The same amount of food and water could sustain a larger population of men whom are not as tall than a population of taller men. And the same amount of technology could sustain a larger population of men who are not as tall. For example, you could fit more smaller men on transportation systems, thereby making your transportation systems more efficient per person. In the future, we'd probably design people and technology to interact efficiently. There's actually an article written over that, written by a tall man, actually. He says he wishes he was smaller, but that's a problem. Yeah. I don't think people should wish to be smaller or bigger. Once again, as I said, it's about being the best we can together with the unique conditions we have. We must love each other's conditions, which have made us. I wouldn't want to wish I wouldn't wish someone to be smaller or larger. I like them just the way they are. However, I also love to see them healthy. I love them and love to see them healthy. And wishing you were someone else is not healthy. It's not healthy. Tall people can do other things that shorter people cannot in this world, and vice versa. For the work I do, it definitely pays to be smaller. Uh, you take a lot of falls in construction uh, and landscaping because the terrain is rough and sometimes unpredictable. Being at my height decreases my mass, which enhances survival in the context I live. Plus, I'm lower to the ground, making shoveling and groundwork more efficient. Also, I found myself in very tight contexts that would be miserable if I was taller and perhaps impassable. But as far as this, back to the father to child interactions, mainly right there, and this is kind of in the far future, I would say in some cases, it's good to have a tall dad. Uh, and as I said, for intimidation purposes or whatever. Um, But we're talking like way in the future, where we're past that kind of stuff, and we're just past violence. We've solved for violence like that. Uh, so in that context, if you were to design a father in an advanced civilization where we're all getting along, how would we design him? I think you'd actually want men who aren't very tall, because they're more eye level with children, enabling them to get to that level with less energy and have more thoughtful communication because of this interaction of eyes. And due to their lower mass, the men can wrestle around with them and have a lot less chance of hurting them, and be more engaging, you know. And that would be, once again, a little bit for boys especially. I think you'd wrestle around with a boy much more than you do a girl, and so for a boy dad, that would be definitely, I guess, advantageous there. I'm not saying like, I hate saying that kind of stuff because it makes me feel like tall dads aren't as good or something, but not saying that at all. I'm not saying that they can't be good, but this is just what it is, I guess. You're talking about how would you design. We talked about how natural selection has designed man, and then we're talking about how civilization would design man. So, and it's all about, remember, working together, blah 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 blah, harmony, and holding hands. And so that's more about that than this. And this kind of solution would be only like it made. It would be a solution within inside this other larger solution of us all holding hands, no matter our diversity. So you'd have I think a little bit better interaction with children there in that design of being a little bit shorter, and as well as resource usage, more efficient on resource and technological usage, and having enhanced survivability from fall damage. I think that would give justification to actually make men shorter to optimally interact with their technology. But as I said, we live in the now, and more than about that, it's about all us working together. And that's the primary strategy. Any kind of strategy of like creating like new like species almost, or designing humans, that would be a solution within this larger solution. So humans have been evolved to be certain shapes and sizes. Yeah. Let's see. So yeah, there is this kind of natural selection that we've evolved to be. We're like these naturally selected people, and there's a lot of baggage in there. That's not, men shouldn't find it attractive to dominate women, and women shouldn't find it attractive to dominate them or think it's all right. They need to stick up for themselves. We have to evolve out of that. Into a more familial civil state. So, and what's funny is, so we get this kind of naturally selected civilization society, and then it's almost like when you get to on the type 0 phase, and then you go into type 1 phase of Kardashev scale, 2, 3, and get out of patriarchy, a lot of things flip. It's no longer about being domineering and having and getting all the money in the territory and getting more and more and more. It's about spending it and being a more familial Fred Rogers. That flip. We get like flip. in this, our perceptions of right and wrong, our leadership, our society flips from this patriarchy into a more honorable democracy that honors the right. Now, why this beta prey female agency is unhealthy is because it enables the alpha predator male agency. Instead of more standing up for its rights and others that the alpha predator male agency oppresses. And it also sometimes assists or the alpha predator male in oppression. Uh, a lot of females aren't so much clutched in that agency, though. Malala Yousafzai. Uh, and I'll get into Malala a second, but the BPFA, the Beta Prey Female Agency, it's like, and it's sad and it's unhealthy, but they can't help it. It's just like the Alpha Predator Male Agency. But as I said, it's kind of like it enables the abuse to itself, and it can't help it. It's like that's the only ones that survived, so all the ones that stood up for themselves get exiled or killed. Malala, for example, the men try to kill off the girls if they try to get their rights. Just a mere right to education. The women that stand up, as I said, don't usually survive, but women with beta prey female agency usually do survive, and they replicate, and that kind of memory replicates. It's an agency in women that has been evolved into existence by the violence of patriarchy that seeks to dominate women and into dominance hierarchies. Alpha predator male agency has, I don't want to say that, I don't want to sound too brutal, but it is brutal, and it has to be said brutal to say. Sometimes maybe not this brutal, but I will. It's beta prey female agency has been beat into existence. It's been maimed and killed, assaulted. That's the reason it's there. It's like that's the ones that survived. It's a very sad thing. It's like if you stick up for yourself, well, you die. And the agency that kind of doesn't stick up for itself survives, and it's born from that brutality of patriarchy. Sorry, it was though. It was maimed and killed into existence. So, if not too long ago, everywhere was like this with Malala. If women tried to stand up for their rights, they were beaten and eventually killed if they persisted. Malala had other places to go to get her rights honored, unlike these other women of the past, and continued her fight for the rights of others. But if this were 200 years ago, no places too much existed, if at all. And she couldn't travel to any. She probably would have ended up dying back in those days if she persisted in fighting for the rights of herself and others. So her agency, that rather kind of stubborn, I'm going to, get what I and others should have by right, that attitude exists in women. It's just, it doesn't usually survive. It isn't selected for. A very sad, tragic agency. Beta prey female agency is born from the oppression of patriarchy, the alpha predator male agency. In many ways, women were the first slaves, or more precisely, the first beta. The first betas that were subjugated along with the children inside the human group, the micro-patriarchy, before the afflicted men started making larger societies, larger patriarchy, that enabled him to extremely beta other men. So it's like this group of men. You have 7,000 years ago, you have all these tribes, and you have these kind of a diverse array of them. You have all kinds of different. Some are more egalitarian, Some of them are patriarchal, and the patriarchal ones end up dominating the rest. They control the rest because that's what they're it's all about dominate their in group and then dominate the out group. And that 7,000 year ago, that patrilineal kind of almost genocide through constant warfare, this kind of this demonstration of this fact that micro patriarchies emerge, they get larger, and then they start clashing with others, and then it's just a constant domination of patriarchy and larger patriarchy over other patriarchies, and it's that's just that those women and those children were the kind of first slaves of the first patriarchies way back when, those first micro patriarchies. The women and children of their tribes were like the first kind of slaves that they mistreated, and then they got larger and started enslaving other men. So that's what seems to me has happened, and it's so ingrained we don't even see it. That's so ingrained we don't even see it as like they are slaves. It's so like it's so subconsciously not even realized. We call it marriage for 7,000 years, or 5,000, 4,000. They call it marriage, but it's really like a form of subjugation. It's a kind of slavery. The marriage was not a happy thing. Often, it was exchange of property. So anyway, slavery. It was a form of slavery. So what's good is these kind of ancestral mind states or agency can be countered through education. Of social justice movements. You educate them with social justice movements such as feminism. In fact, that's one of the main reasons we need feminism and other social justice movements, is to counter these prejudiced, oppressive, I should say biased, oppressive, and slave agencies, these kind of naturally selected alpha predator male, beta prey female agencies. Well,